Hello, this is Lowell's Dopity Doodoo, and welcome back to another tutorial inside LEGO Mindstorms. In my previous video, what I did is I taught you how to install LEGO Mindstorms, which was fairly simple, but now I'm going to get into actually how to use the software. When you start off, click New Project. Next, click Program, and then Open. This will create a new blank program. Once you are inside the software, you might want to close the content editor. I'll run through some of the basic functionalities of LEGO Mindstorms. This is the play block, where the program will start off when you download the program, or where you can click play to run the program when you are connected to the EV3 brick. This is the download button, download and run button, and another button. This is the port view where you can see all the different sensors and motors that are plugged in. And this is where you can see the robots that are connected or can possibly be connected with Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, USB. This is to disconnect from the robot that you are currently connected to. Alright, so before we get started, I'll run through some more basics I guess. This is to create a new part of a project. It isn't a completely new project. To create a brand new project, click this plus. This is add a program or an experiment. I will get into the basics of experiments later on. When you start off, you need to drag blocks onto the screen. This is the way you can make the robot move forward and do other stuff to that nature. So I'll start off with a really basic part, which is making the robot move forward. I'm going to use the move tank block because I find this block much more easier to use. When the block is on the screen, there's some basic configurations which I will run through. Sorry about the little bit of background noise. That was my microphone. Okay, that should be just enough of disturbances as you should receive in this video. Alright, so, as you can see there is B plus C. What this is these are the port values. You should know about ports on the EV3 brick. Ports are where you plug in motors and sensors. If you didn't already know, motors can be plugged into ports A, B, C, D, whereas sensors can only be plugged into ports 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the way that they designed it, and it isn't universal everything. So, ports B and C, you can probably notice that there isn't 1, 2, 3, 4. You can change the values just by clicking up the pop-up menu. The default is B and C, because using the LEGO Mindstorms EV3 instruction manual, they directed you to use motors, well, the two main motors connected to ports B and C. Enough with the motors now. I'll get into how to actually use this block. Brake at end. What this means is whether the robot will completely stop at the end and apply brakes, or whether the motors will turn off and put the robot in neutral, making that if this was coast, what would happen is that the robot would go into neutral mode. And when the robot is in neutral mode, it can basically go anywhere, and the motors are not held in one specific spot. This is the rotations. The rotations off the wheel or the axle. So, for example, if I wanted to make the robot move forward 2 rotations, I would enter 2 and click enter or just click away. And this will make the robot move forward 2 rotations off the wheel size. This is power, how fast the wheel goes and how powerful the wheel is. For example, if I made this 100, the right wheel, which is port C, would move at a speed of 100. The unique thing about this specific block in LEGO Mindstorms is that you can control the power of both the different motors. For regular blocks like this, you'll notice that it only has one power value, which means that both the wheels move at the same speed. But using this specific block, you can make both wheels go the same power, different powers, and even in opposite directions. For example, I have port B, which is the power of the left wheel, B. So if I made this positive 100, which is just plain 100, and made port C, which is the right, negative 100, the robot would spin in the exact same spot really quickly for 2 rotations of the wheel. This is the way that these power bars work. But you can also notice that you can leave it at 0 too. 0 will mean that the robot does not move at all, although the robot will wait till it moves 2 rotations, creating a type of glitch, you could say. You can notice that there's this big square cubish button over here. This button is very important because this button represents the unit that you move forward. For example, this is rotations. They have degrees, which is much more accurate because you know different degrees like 270, which is 1/3 of a rotation, 180, which is half, and the last one, 90. But you can also do very precise rotations, like let's say 123 degrees. What 123 degrees means is that the wheel will rotate 123 degrees, creating a very, very precise robot movement and the way it performs. Seconds. Seconds is really straightforward. It is the amount of seconds that the motor will be on. It doesn't guarantee where the robot will go. It just guarantees that the robot will be on for that amount of time. I'll get into when this might be useful later on in further tutorials. You'll notice that I left off and on to the last. This is because they are mainly used in sensor applications, but I will tell you how to use them. On will leave the robot on, basically meaning that both wheels will be on for an infinite amount of time. The only way you can turn this off is if you take another move block of the same type and then off. This way, the robot will be on for a fraction of amount of time and then go off, because there's nothing in between. Alright, so enough with this block. I'm going to show you how to use the move steering block. This block is fairly simple and fairly similar. You have the same amount of units than which the robot can go, but you have a new addition, steering. Making this 45, which is exactly, I'll just type it, 45, which is exactly a quote-unquote right turn. But this actually will not make the robot turn right. This isn't very useful for my personal experience. This will just make the robot turn in that direction. Making the robot turn 90 degrees is a challenge. But, sorry, I got carried away. What this does again is, it'll make the robot turn in that direction. You can also notice that this updates live as well. And what this is power, but this controls both of the ports. And then you have rotations, and it's pretty much the same thing. So, you have the 2 basic move blocks in LEGO Mindstorms. You might notice that they have a medium motor block too. This is for the smaller motor. You should already know how to use this if you listen closely to these instructions, because there's nothing new in this. For the large motor, it's if you want to only move one motor off these both large motors. As you can see, it's fairly the same thing. So, you have learned 4 different move blocks now. In the next tutorial, I will get into the weight block, and maybe loop, definitely not switch, because this panel is fairly complicated to follow. And this basically teaches you all of the sensors.